And you can, we are live on the World Wide Web. Right on. And is anybody back in the booth? No? No, so? We're going to bring the house lights up a little bit, bring my mic up a little bit.
Woo.
Okay. And bring us a glass of wine and a beer.
Woo! Keeps getting better.
That's what we're getting. You already talk about your family quite a bit in the show, so we already know mom, dad, brother. So we'll save that. Did you go to college?
2.5 years I went to the University of Florida, and I dropped out, never declaring a major because my parents paid for a lot of drunken whorery. Just an aggressive amount. Because my parents were so strict growing up that as soon as they let me free, I was like, boys and booze! Because my curfew was like 9 o'clock, and nobody would ever let me do anything. They're like, we're not picking you up, we got to drop you off 15 minutes later.
And so when you got out of college in Gainesville, or when you left there, how long before you got into stand-up comedy?
Oh, it was years. I worked, let's see, what did I do? I waited tables for years. I worked for a pedophile clown for a while.
Really?
Yeah, I had a lot of series of weird I was a nanny. My cousins were all child actresses. My aunt was just living vicariously through her 3 children. And so I did that for a while, and I knew that I wanted to do something in entertainment, but I didn't see any women that were like me, so I didn't know it was something I could make a living doing. I knew I was funny, because every time I was dumped, it was part of my sales pitch. I'd be like, I'm smart, I'm funny, I'm a good little dancer, and then they never wanted any of it.
So you, and now I'm curious, when you said that you were a nanny with child actors, were they anybody that we would know?
Yeah, my youngest cousin, my aunt had all 3 girls on network series at the same time. The youngest was on ER. She played Anthony Edwards' daughter. She was on Long Kiss Goodnight. She played Gina Davis's daughter. All 3 were working. Now I think she's on Young and the Restless. She had a 2-year contract. Oh. The middle was on Yuli's Gold with Peter Fonda, and then the oldest was a series regular on The Nanny for 6 years.
Oh, wow.
Californication. Yeah, they're all working, and one got perfect SAT scores. She's a real. When your family's damaged, it produces a lot of people in entertainment. That's how I know the Baldwins were real fucked up growing up. That shit ain't normal. It's not normal for people to need that much validation in life.
Do you stay in touch with them at all?
Yeah, they're actually really sweet, well-adjusted girls for what a wackadoo my aunt was.
And we're gonna get to that in a minute.
All right.
And so you had, so what was it that moved you into stand-up comedy? What happened?
My ex, I came home and we had this house, and I was working at a talent agency at the time, so I had these really long hours, and I came home to find out that he had been renting out our house as a location place for porn shoots. Yeah. So I slapped him when he was taking a shit. And then he came home and served me with a restraining order. And I was sleeping on my friend's couch after being served a restraining order and gathering my possessions, like Shop Till You Drop, and throwing them in my shitty Toyota Echo. And then I was like, I really have no skills. So I gave myself like 3 months to redirect some energy. And then that's how I started doing. And I was like, oh, and then I remember after a year, I was like, oh, this is my calling in life. This is all I was ever.
Was that in, what city was that in?
I was in LA driving home from the Comedy Store, and I remember just being depressed like for years and years because I had no real sense of purpose. So then when I finally found comedy and I was like, oh, I'm actually good at something and maybe I can make a life of this, then it was like this overwhelming moment and then I was actually a better employee after that because everything just became a means to an end to pursue this dream. And I was I wasn't fired from everything before that. I was a horrible employee.
And I think that, and I would say, I give that advice to people, and I had a similar experience that when you find your gift, whatever it is, when you find it, everything matters. Then everything becomes relevant. And I meet people who are retired, and you ask them what's your gift, and they really couldn't answer that question. And so it's a blessing when you find it. And so from that moment, how long did it take you until Last Comic Standing hit?
I was really fortunate. Like, I mean, there's so few female comics that they're looking for them, and I wasn't ready because I really stunk when I did Last Comic Standing. I had been doing comedy 2.5 years, and then I got Just for Laughs. I was a new face at the Montreal Comedy Festival, which is like one of the bigger comedy festivals.
Yeah, one of the biggest. I think.
Yeah, so it was kind of unheard of. I got that after 2.5 years, and then I did Last Comic after 3.5, and I was essentially an open micer who got lucky. And I'm sure they needed some lady, and I cried in all my interviews. I was like, my parents don't love me, but you people do, and that's okay. And they're like, she's a crier, good television. And then I started making my living after 4 years.
And because when you came here was about a year after the Last Comic Standing, I believe. But I remember, and that happened with another female comic by the name of Amy Schumer. Had a similar experience, and I remember when she first came here, all of the agents kept. I knew. I'd already heard through the grapevine. Same situation. She hadn't been doing that long. She had maybe 20 minutes of material. As a headliner, you're supposed to have at least 45. And they were all like, "Oh no, she's got 45. She's solid." And then we get in the car together, and I go, "How much time you really got? Really, 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 really?" And she goes, "About 25."
Yeah.
And,
it's terrifying.
And we did improv and had fun. But when you came in the first time, you were solid all the way through.
I think it was a few years after Last Comic.
Was it that
and I'd
long?
been on the road for a while.
Right.
It's okay being on, like, because when I first started, it was the same thing. And when somebody says you have to do 45, but you only have 25, and then you're like, oh shit. And then the 25 doesn't go well, so that reduces it to like 17, and you're like, I gotta fill a lot of talking time, and people are just staring at you like, we paid for this shit. You better be funny, you dumb bitch. You better make us laugh. I've paid 2
And you know what's
drinks.
the amazing thing is you stick with it. I think people are so. Can you imagine any performer? But when you have to be funny, and that's what the audience expects, and you get up here, and the audience does not buy into you, and you realize as a professional, as a headliner, that they don't buy into you in the first 10. I am contracted to stand on this stage for 45 to 50 minutes, no matter what, if they stare at you the whole time.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
Yeah, you're like, I need to eat.
Yeah.
So you guys better come along.
And that's how tough you are. That's
pay.
how tough people are that do this, because most people would have that experience 1 or 2 times and go, I'm done with this.
No, I think it takes, like, I really believe, especially as a female comic, because you're alone on the road and you sacrifice so much other shit, like relationships, really pay a price. You have to have been through so much as a child that there is nothing else. So, like, the rejection that I felt as a kid is nothing in comparison. You know, like not getting laughs is like, oh well, at least my dad's not beating me. You're like, all right, it's fine. Dad beat the funny right into me.
That's right. And we're getting ready to go there.
All right.
I'm gonna ask you one other question. From there you went to, because we talked about this last night, and I thought it was interesting. Always with comics is your show something that is very different from you, or is it an extension of your personality? And I think in most cases it's an extension of our personalities, and maybe an exaggerated extension. But you very quickly, when Howard Stern did the thing, the hottest female, then now with you, and I wonder if you ever get tired of it, you know, that's how you're described. It is sexy, it is hot, it is like you're the Playboy bunny comedian.
But it's not how I think everybody feels exactly how they felt in high school, and when nobody would be my friend, nobody would date me, that's what you equate yourself to being, is whatever you felt then. So I never feel like that person. I think in America, I don't know any woman that has fabulous self-esteem. I think if you're bombarded with all this imagery of these perfect women that don't exist, that are digitally retouched and made thinner, like I don't know any woman that's like, I love my body. Like, I have never met that chick my whole life, so I don't know I don't. When people say that, it doesn't. It's not how I process myself.
So to you, it's just like let them say whatever they want to say to market or whatever. It's no big deal.
I don't care as long as you're making a living and you're making people laugh. Like that's what genuinely brings me a lot of pleasure is making people happy. When people leave or somebody wasn't pleased, like I know that comedy, it's people have different tastes, and sometimes I'm a little dirty or people are more conservative. I understand that I'm not necessarily their taste, but every comic that gets on stage has really good intentions to just make strangers laugh, and whether it's for their own validation, like most of us are real sad, empty human beings. Everybody that stands here just really needs every single one of you to love us. Yes, him too. We're just empty vessels that oh, yes, it is.
Now, well, it just depends. But now, and we talk about this last time. I had several people. I told you I had several people say to me. They go, "Oh, she's posed nude before. She's been like a centerfold or whatever." There it is. This thing, and you
my
have
reaction
not.
was like, "What?
Yeah,
why? Nobody wants to see my 35-year-old titties. Nobody needs to see that."
And because of the nature of your show and the way you're hyped, people think that. But you've never.
No. And I don't even think, like, I just think the idea of some image popping up, because every time I had a friend, she was on Survivor, she had a sex tape, which every time she's Googled, that's the first thing that pops up. That is terrifying. Because then there's some dude that you're going to want to date someday, and then you go home to meet his family at Christmas, and they're like, who wants to see my titties? Like, that's weird. And, oh, thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Oh, and I'm sure your lady's real happy about your shouting right now. I'm sure she's...
Pump it up.
Oh, man.
And I thought that was interesting when we talked about it. Now, getting to the family. Something that April, when I first met April, the first time she played here, and me and my wife Pam, we were all sitting around talking. And April is very... At least with us, you were very open almost immediately about talking about how you grew up.
Yeah.
And you didn't have any of that in your show at the time.
It's really hard.
And I just want to say that it was hilarious. The dysfunction, the way you presented it, was very, very funny, and you have struggled with getting that on stage, correct?
Yeah, I just think to open up and then for people not to laugh at what has, you know, like obviously I've gotten through the pain. I think it's hilarious. Like I grew up with an aunt that was a paranoid schizophrenic. She thought there were people on the walls. My grandmother had a stroke. She lost her speech when I was in 2nd grade and only retained the use of the words good boy, son of a bitch, goddammit, and cocksucker. So... She was just this old broad just swearing at the TV like, God damn it, good a boy, good cocksucker. Like, that's not normal.
That's not a grandma.
Yeah.
That's not the grandma memory that most people think you want to have.
Son of a bitch. You're like, oh man, grandma needs a shot of insulin. You just didn't know. Like, she was always good a boy. And then I had my other side of my mom's side of the family. It's just like a sea of alcoholics. My one uncle was arrested twice in one night for DUI. The cops let him go, and then he jumped in his car again. He drove off all drunk, and the same dude was like, what the fuck? I'm pulling you over again, you retard. And then my other uncle was arrested. My grandmother used to listen on the police scanner for all her kids being arrested. Like that was just her fun. That was like a good evening for Shirley. And then the other one was arrested for DUI by a bicycle cop because he was caught vomiting out his window at a stoplight. Yeah.
And then your mom's stories are just priceless.
Well, I do take like pictures and, you know, bathing suits or whatever, because I grew up with a mom that's all she did with me was dress me up, and then my mom just set like a lot of pictures of her crawling around our living room, just a lot of pictures of like this Asian living room with a gong, and my mom just like a series of crawling photos, and then we would develop them. Like that's the only thing my mom ever did with me was develop pictures of herself in like bikinis and stuff, and I'm like, there's nothing better for a 5-year-old than Stop Bath. That is just the one dude that knows photography got that reference.
And then you talk a little bit about your dad, and your mom really does paint Michael Bolton pictures all the time.
All the time. If you go home and you Google the Chicago Tribune, they picked up this story because I sent them this video of my mom's Michael Bolton collection. Just Chicago Tribune, April Macie, and Michael Bolton, and it pops right up. She has paintings of her and Michael Bolton topless on a seahorse, her and Michael Bolton on a unicorn, her and Michael Bolton, just Bolton everywhere.
And it's always the
long-haired Bolton.
Long-haired
She only
Bolton.
likes long-haired Bolton.
Yeah, she won't accept the haircut Bolton.
No, and yeah.
And so you've got all of this, and what is the difficulty, the challenge of taking that and putting it on stage?
I'm terrified that it's not as funny as I think it is. Where I'm like, okay, I grew up with this and it's funny to me to create these characters and to know these people. So I think I've done the stuff that's more palatable for people. But I think the fear is that you release this huge part of yourself and then people either are turned off by it or they don't find you funny or they don't quite buy into it. Because there's so much. Like I've had people with those like Augustin Burroughs novels, like Running with Scissors, and they're like, that can't all be true. I'm like, it is true. Because I grew up in one of those families where people talk about having one black sheep, and I'm like, my whole family is just a flock of bad black sheep, and I'm like this Marilyn and this family of emotional monsters. That's what I grew up with.
And yet, reality television, that is the hottest thing in the country, is exactly that. Yeah. It is massive dysfunction that we all love to be the fly on the wall and watch it. Yet, as a comedian, when you're able to take that dysfunction and create laughter out of it, rather than it just being dark and you just kind of sit there and just embellish the darkness, you take something that was dark and you bring light to it.
Yeah, that's what I've done. I feel like I would not have survived my childhood had I not been able to make it funny. I mean, for me, comedy was always a defense. It was like both my grandparents died of AIDS. Like both my like it was just craziness. My aunt committed suicide. Like it was just growing up. I don't know if I'm supposed to be funny or if this is like I don't know what the hell's supposed to happen.
No, you're not supposed to be funny.
Oh, okay.
We're supposed to get to know you.
There was this heaviness growing up, and the only time there was any light in my home was if I was making people laugh and it was usually like mocking people in my family. And you know, my dad to this day, there's nothing he enjoys more than hearing jokes about himself. He just sits and he's like, I am angry. And I'm like, yeah, you are. So, but it's hard to make that stuff funny. Like I've been working on a grandparents' AIDS joke for years, and that shit is not that funny.
It's tough. It's tough. But and then we've encouraged, I know I've encouraged April to go in that direction just simply because I know that that's where the brilliance comes from. That's where we can all sit up here and do jokes that are just kind of, you know, lighthearted and typical. But when we really dive into the life experience and I'm going to say, we all grew up thinking that all of us are supposed to live in this Leave It to Beaver, you know, America. How many people live there? Anybody? How many people grew up more in a environment that was a little dysfunctional by applause than functional?
Woo!
Yeah, that's most of the crowd. That's most of America. So you know, there's a little bit. We talked about in the green room that I toured with a comic one time who I'd known for years, and I used to have him open for me, and I got to be great friends with him. And as we were coming home one day from a show, he said, I need to share something with you about me so that you really know me. He goes, I'm a habitual liar. And he goes, let me tell you why I'm a habitual liar. And I knew he grew up in massive dysfunction. Massive. I mean, compared to what April's telling you, way worse. Criminals.
Yay.
His family were criminals, you know. And he told me, he said, you know, I started school at 5, 6 years old, and teachers going around going, what's your family like? What's your family like? What's your family like, right? And everybody feels like, hell, I got to tell them my family is June and Ward Cleaver. is what I got to say. I got to say it's something like that. You know what I mean? So he goes, I couldn't say that my mother was a prostitute and my father's a drug dealer and the violence that went on in our home. So he goes, so I just made it up. I just made it up. And he goes, at 5 years old, you're making up a life. You're making up a life. So you're living a lie. And you just live the lie, live the lie, live the lie. And there's a point where I think that it's wonderful when a comedian can take that, realize it, and turn it around and make it funny, so that we all realize that you can come out of it and be okay on the other side.
Well, I think there's yeah.
Well, you know what I mean? It is, and that's what I know that's what you're struggling with.
I'm working on it. I'm working. It's getting there. I'm starting to open up my family, but there's so much shame associated with it. I think that's why it's hard. I think that's why I also talk about sex, because I feel like women are just indoctrinated with shame from the time they're young about sexuality, which is a huge part of who you are. And I don't feel like it's even possible to have decent self-esteem when this huge part of who you are, the sexual element, is just squelched from such a young age. Like you're taught, like, oh, good girls don't like sex. And so I think that's why I talk about sexuality. I think that's why that's
easier. I've always encouraged good girls to like sex. I mean, myself, I've tried to really go over to the other side.
One man, just a one-man
I'm just one guy. I'm just one guy.
Just a one-man helping machine right here.
I know. I'm trying. Empower the women. You know, I'm empower. You know. Any questions for April? Just raise your hand. Any questions at all from the audience? Anything?
Yeah.
Yes.
Remember in the beginning, you said something about the wiener and. I'm the guy to say, no, I'm glad you don't have a wiener.
Wait, you're glad? Wait, what about
you don't have a wiener? Oh.
Be glad.
Oh, you're glad she doesn't have a wiener.
They're awesome. Why? I would like just a wiener for a day program would be really fun. For everybody just to try out a wiener for a day.
Is that what you would like to try, a wiener for a day?
Yeah. Thank you. It sounds fun, right? It sounds fun to just flap it around.
It was weird. You talk about the anal sex part, and men have this weird thing that's like, well, why wouldn't a woman like that? That's the same. And it is way not the same.
Just stop it. Just stop poking at our buttholes.
Right.
Just stop it. Just leave our buttholes alone.
What got me was when finally a woman said to me, said, oh, you can, I'll tell you what, you can do that to me, and then I get to do it to you. I never did it. I passed. A prostate exam ain't even that happy a time. Another question? Did you have a question? No? Anything else?
Nobody wants to know anything. Oh, there's a question.
Yes? Was over here?
I do respect one time earlier when you were calling out the Kardashians and that Jersey Shore thing.
Oh, yeah.
TV. I respect you a lot for that. Like, that's when you got, like, my self-confidence, everything going for you.
Oh.
It's, like, too often, like, they put stuff out there. They expect everybody to just go with that. And I really appreciate you calling them out. And, like, that's not how we all are. That's not what we all think about. And
No, those people make way too much money for no tangible talent. When there are people that provide services like teachers and, you know, when teachers start making an equivalent salary, then I'll start paying attention to those dumb. There were 3 women that were nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize, or they won the Nobel Peace Prize last year for like one was like the first female president of Africa, the other was like a religious freedom fighter, and nobody knows their names, but everybody names those. Everybody can name the 3 Kardashian couzes. Everybody can name those broads.
That's right. Was there anything else? Yes.
Watching like the open mic deal, you know, they're like, oh, brain fart. How long did it take you to get over, you know, stopping and being like, oh my god, like,
I would say I think it takes a while to just build any sort of confidence to realize that you're actually funny, where you're like, oh, okay, most of the time I do pretty well, and if a few years, like it takes a few years of getting on stage, probably 350 days a year. I mean, you're getting, I had to calculate because I've been drinking. But, like, you're getting on stage every day, 2-3 times a day. Like, tomorrow I'll do 2 shows, Saturday 2 shows. And it's years of that. And then finally you go, oh, fuck it. Okay, they're paying me. So I must be okay. Like, I must be doing pretty decent with my life. But the first few years, I would feel really terrified and nauseous. And
I think that I tell comics this that come through our classes is that I think to be a professional, you really have to have a great kind of false sense of confidence. This kind of thing inside of you that believes you're better than what you are, just to keep doing it, because it does. She's saying hundreds and hundreds of performances, to get yourself into a comfort zone. You just have to be dedicated to the process. Yes.
My dad thinks it's awesome. My dad could not. He's like, I'm so angry. You're so right. Like, he just sits there laughing. And my mom doesn't like it as much, but she's still proud. But my mom both my parents got married at 18. Like, they had never been with another person. So when I talk about sex, you can see the shame just sort of wash over them. It's like, oh shit, that's ours. That lady's ours right there. We made that, talking about dicks, that chick on stage. So they're proud. I mean, I think they're proud, hopefully.
You have a good relationship with both.
Yeah, they have no retirement, so they're hoping I make it. Neither one of them have saved a dime their entire life. So they better fucking be supportive, otherwise they aren't going to have a place to live in 10 years.
If you were getting ready, if you had developed and you're getting ready all this material about your family, and you got it honed down, and by God, it's going to be a Showtime special. Mm-hmm. Would you call the family and let them know, hey, just to give you a heads up?
No.
Or let them just watch the special?
I'd let them watch. I think I feel like it's such an accomplishment. I don't think people realize how hard it is to get on television.
Hard.
So, like, when my parents, my dad's so proud of all these little things, and I think it gives him something, because my dad's dream was to be a comedy writer, so I think I'm living his dream for him, and he's proud. And you're like, oh, that's my baby. And then it gives him something to talk about to ladies and stuff. Now that my parents are divorced, he's like, my daughter's on Showtime. Like, he's real proud. So.
Anything else? April Macie, ladies and gentlemen. She'll be right back here in the back with her T-shirt. And say hello. And she will be here through Sunday night. Tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, we will both be on 107.9 with David and Christina, the #1 morning show here for about an hour. So tune in there, and hopefully we'll see you. And she has her Showtime special coming out August the 5th. Is that correct?
No, it's on now.
It's on now. Was it last August?
Yeah, Snoop. No, it was this last couple of months. Snoop Dogg's Bad Girls of Comedy.
Oh, okay.
I'm the white one. If you don't recognize me, I'll be the white one.
Great. So watch for that. Thanks everybody for coming out. Please exit that way. Thanks, April.